Hi again, it's me, Annie, here with your fourth in the video series of the Leeds Beckett Confidence Development Programme. And today we're going to be thinking about the topic facing complexity confidently. So this is all about decision making in a complex world where there's often no right decisions, and working out how we can confidently take the best options open to us. Or make those options work, make those options become the best option for us once we've made that decision. So we are going to be looking over, as I said, that kind of how we make decisions in an imperfect world. And to do this, we're going to have a look at a couple of different decision-making models and consider actually how we take a good decision, what elements make up a good decision and the steps that lead towards making that decision. And if you're with us for the live session, you'll have the opportunity to take part in a group decision-making activity where you can put these skills into practice. And otherwise, we'll take you through some tips about how to make good decisions and how we can situate these within the world that we live in. So I'm going to start us off with a quote. We live in an imperfect world, so as I've said, arguably there are no right decisions, just pragmatic ones. And the sooner we accept that, in most cases, decision-making will be a matter of looking for the best imperfect option. The quicker you can kick projects or initiatives into action and confidently take steps towards your goals. So in the words of Jim Rohn, it doesn't matter which side of the fence you get off on. What matters most is getting off. You can't make progress without making decisions. So it's all about getting started, about moving ourselves forward. And along the way, we'll then make those decisions into the best decision possible. And that's about our attitude and the actions that we take towards those outcomes. So, as I said, we're going to share with you a couple of different decision-making models today. The first one is the classic decision-making model, the rational decision-making model, it's called, which consists of six steps. And these are the steps that decision makers need to take, according to this model, to achieve the optimal decision, given their goals and different constraints, which might be time, might be resources, might be money. So in order to come up with an appropriate decision, you should establish a list of criteria used to evaluate your choices. So this might be relating to those constraints. It might be it's got to be within this budget. I've got to be able to do it within this time frame, or perhaps relating to your goals. So which one most closely fits the goals that you've got for this project, for this activity, for this decision. So by adopting this model, decision makers have opportunity to contemplate on what are the things that matter most in their situation, and then select the choices that best reflect these standards that you've set for yourselves. However, the problem of this model is in the fact that people don't always know what they want. We often don't know what we want, and that's why we're struggling to make a decision. Or perhaps we don't have enough information about the available alternatives. And usually people end up making a good enough or a safe bet decision, which is absolutely fine. And I suppose this model is there to help you analyse the options. So once you've generated them, analyse those options and select the best outcome. And often this model, an important step is also the evaluation and the learning, which brings you round again. You might make a different decision next time, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't the right decision. It wasn't the best decision the first time round. So that's the rational decision-making process. The second decision-making model, which is utilised frequently by experts and experienced managers, is the intuitive decision-making model. So at first, this model appears to be based solely on gut feeling, but on closer examination, it's in fact quite a sophisticated process where you apply your intuition in many different ways. So first, you would use that intuition to detect a potential problem or a question that you've got, and then again use that intuition to investigate patterns and the different elements that kind of affect this problem. So in the case of many of us, intuition means that our previous experiences, perhaps our expertise in an area, our education background, information we have about the people involved, and other valuable resources may be unknown to other people, but we're able to use these things to interrogate pieces of data and facts and figures to complete a picture of the whole problem in what might look like kind of wishy-washy way, but actually it's bringing all these different bits of our experience to play to help us evaluate the problem and the best possible outcome. So you'd then use your intuition as a checkpoint to eliminate anti-intuitive decisions and go with your kind of the best decision that kind of feels the best. So one distinctive feature of this decision-making model is that a part of the process is actually thinking through the different options and crucially defining and analysing the problem, spending a lot of time thinking about the problem before you move on to the solution. And often we do kind of know what to do before we can necessarily explain our justification for our actions. And the results from their actions can then be helpful to help us to further understand problems. So similar to the similar to the rational model, we can then go around again, perhaps make a different decision next time because we'll be basing that on more experience. But again, that doesn't mean that our previous decision was wrong. So how can we use these two models to take good decisions? The first step is to know your objectives. So this might be a goal you've got. It might be understanding the desired outcome of a given situation. And this can help us to work backwards and take the steps that we need to achieve that outcome. So objectives should anticipate the future, taking what you hope to accomplish into account. And articulating what you want is a crucial first step before you even begin to try and achieve your goals. So keeping these factors in mind will help you best formulate the plan to meet those objectives. Think about how your goals and objectives fit in with your larger plans. For example, if you're considering whether to leave a part-time job to pursue a kind of new career opportunity, ask yourself, what are your long-term goals? How do you think this new job might help you reach those goals? Or is there a chance or some other reason that this new job might prevent you from achieving them? And you should also consider all aspects of your life, for example, how your professional goals might affect your personal goals or your educational goals and vice versa. So once you've kind of fully evaluated your objectives and got clear in your head the direction you want to go, you can start gathering evidence to weigh the pros and cons about how you might get there. So you can evaluate your sources of evidence and understand the trade-offs of different choices, and having a clear idea of what might happen, both good and bad, can help you to make a more informed decision. So you might want to talk to people who've taken similar actions previously, do your research online, talk to your peers, your colleagues, your lecturers, your family, and another way to approach this is to write out your pros and cons. And again, it's often based on personality and preferences, whether you prefer to do this more intuitively or in a more rational comparative style. But writing out your lists of pros and cons can help you to compare them side by side and then compare the trade-offs that you're going to make if you take different routes. Third, manage your time. If you've got a series of decisions to make, it's important to be mindful of what choices need a decision first. Some decisions may even be contingent on the outcome of another, many paths with different routes to take. And in addition to organising situations that require a decision by time requirements, you may also need to adjust your priorities in order to best meet your goals. So day-to-day situations will change, but some decisions will require you then to reevaluate your values and your goals. So give time and priority to choices that require you to reflect and adjust to change, because these often take the longest and can be the most important too. So then you want to write down what needs to be done. Seeing it all in a manageable list can make it easier to weigh the possible outcomes of your decision and prioritise which decisions need to be made first. In addition to the pros and cons that you might have gone through, consider the unknowns, the unknown variables. Every decision may have unpredictable outcomes, but anticipating those can really help you to evaluate whether or not a possible outcome is worth the risks involved. Sometimes it will be necessary to make decisions without all the information you want. And in that case, a rational approach sometimes becomes harder because you actually don't have the full information you need to weigh up decisions. And you may need to bring some of your intuition into that decision making. So a combination of the two approaches can be helpful. It's important to remember that you will need to make decisions with the best information you have available at the time. And it's a good idea to leave yourself an opportunity to then make adjustments in your decision once more information comes available. Or perhaps, as I've mentioned before, evaluate after you've made that decision to see if you might change that decision if you face a similar situation in the future. Remember that no plan is exempt from unforeseen circumstances and obstacles. Build in alternative plans or prepare what-if scenarios for each of your choices. And you'll approach this in different ways, in more formal ways or less formal ways, depending on your personality and what works for you. You can also consider as the final point whether a deeper issue may be complicating things. If an underlying issue is not successfully resolved at an appropriate time, there may be significant repercussions related to your ability to make wise decisions. For example, fear and discomfort can prevent you from making good decisions. And we've talked about making fear-based decisions in the moment. So it's easy to justify a decision that helps you avoid discomfort, but it might not be the best decision. So some of these issues you may need to tackle head on before you're able to move forward and make that decision. If you try to be self-aware, thinking back to our earlier sessions on mindset, listen to those thoughts before you then move on to confronting them and adjusting that thinking process, and recognise when you might be lying to yourself or not necessarily being quite truthful with yourself to avoid something when making a decision. So hopefully by thinking about those two models, and as I said, some of you may prefer a rational decision-making process, that kind of classic model of being very formally weighing up the options and having the criteria that you're using, and others will prefer an intuitive process. But thinking about which of those processes you prefer, or whether it's a combination of the two, you can then go through this kind of list to help you to move forward and make those decisions. If you're not sure which kind of approach you prefer, think about something like planning a holiday. Do you make a list of possible destinations and have kind of tick boxes or different columns for, does it have a pool? Is it by the beach? Cost, how long it's going to take to get there, cost of accommodation, cost of travel. Do you lay that all out in a spreadsheet? I know some of my colleagues certainly do. Or do you think more intuitively about where it is you want to go and how you're going to build your holiday from there? Or again, is it a bit of a combination of the two? But that kind of idea, planning a holiday, can be a really helpful way of working out whether you tend to prefer a rational or an intuitive model. And if you do prefer one or another, why not challenge yourself to try and take decisions in a different way and see what the outcome is? You can start with something smaller, and you might find that moving outside of your comfort zone and using a different way of thinking can help you to take different decisions, which can still be just as good, and help you to work out which model you feel more comfortable using. Another important thing to consider as we think about the decisions we're making is being aware of our assumptions. and checking the veracity of the information that we're receiving. And that's really crucial to making sure those decisions are good. So we've got the example here, which is a bit of a sort of Titanic example, and it uses the example of the weather forecast, making the assumption that the weather forecast is reliable. So if it says there's going to be great weather, clear sailing ahead, the perception is it'll be fine, we're going in the right direction. But we've failed to consider the possibility that the weather report might be wrong. And the reality is that icebergs are further south than expected. So in the gap between that perception and reality is a huge amount of room for disaster to take place. So some of those assumptions you might want to question before you use them as important key pieces of information when you're weighing up your decisions. And another really important point is to seek different perspectives. So it goes back to thinking about collaboration, and we've got another session on collaboration and culture. But everybody has a different set of biases, different appetites for risk, and utilises different approaches to arrive at decisions. So sort of decision making and perspective taking requires the maturity to gain knowledge and be respectful of another person's personal beliefs. So by kind of being highly attuned to the fact that not all people share our personal views and beliefs of the world, we can remain open-minded. But it's also helpful for us to challenge our own views and aid decision making in that manner. And give us an understanding of how decisions will land with others. So asking yourself these three questions can help to support this. So the first one is, why are we doing it this way? Second one, what if we did it another way? And thirdly, how would we do that? And particularly with that second question, what if we did it another way? You might want to think about other people's perspectives when you're kind of thinking of the answer to that question. And even better, if you can actually talk to other people yourself, either the people that you're going to be working with, or your trusted friends or colleagues or peers, because if you do look through those different lenses, you'll see different things, different outcomes, challenge your assumptions, and help us stay away from that disaster iceberg zone. So there's this really great book called Decisive, which is all about this kind of decision making in an imperfect world, and it's by Chip and Dan Heath. So I'd really recommend looking up this book, but I wanted to kind of summarise the key messages from it today in terms of when we're thinking about how to make good decisions. So the first one is, don't artificially limit your choices. So actually there are other decisions, other options that might be available to me that I'm ruling out for some reason. And why am I ruling them out? Question yourself when you're thinking that through. And you don't just have to pursue one idea. You can kind of multi-track many options at once to help you identify which one might be the best. On first view, one option may seem obvious, but if you follow a few down a little bit further down the line, you may see that another one stands out. Look for solutions that somebody else has found to a similar problem, and that might be done by talking to people, doing research online or elsewhere, looking for kind of case studies or similar decisions. And you can also this can help you to understand what the problems they might have encountered were, if they would have done it differently, or if it went really well. And that can be a key piece of information you can use in making your decision. Playing devil's advocate against yourself and building a case against your decision can be helpful in a number of ways. If other people are questioning it, having those criticisms in your mind and already working, will help you to perhaps defend your decision. But equally, in a kind of non-defensive manner, actually, if you find cracks in your decision, it may help you to either avoid those situations emerging, or make you realise that perhaps you need to pursue a different option. So we've talked about how your decisions look from the outside and thinking about multiple perspectives and bringing those into your decision-making process. But also that in terms of planning, you don't necessarily need to make a full plan straight up. you can run small experiments or pilots first to see if your idea works. And this can help you, again, to adjust your decision and plan for some outcomes that you might not have expected. Shift your focus to the future to gain more perspective and again, to identify some of those problems. When decisions conflict with your values, you might want to think about identifying your core priorities. Shift yourself from autopilot to manual control to enforce a decision and make sure that you're making the best decision rather than going with the expected option or the easy option or the route that you've taken before. So these are some kind of questions to ask yourself and some key tips that come up in Chip and Dan Heath's book, which I'd really recommend if this is a topic that you're interested in learning more about and gaining that confidence to take those decisions and move forward confidently. So I also wanted to think about the kind of difference between academic life and work life as we move forwards from the world of university into the world of work. There is, in the world of work, rarely anything like a right or wrong decision. As I've said at the beginning, just the best decision you can make with the information you have at the time. So that's not always the case in terms of what academia teaches us. It often tells us that there is a right or wrong answer, for example, in an exam, and it depends a little bit on the subject we're studying, whether it's more kind of opinion-based, essay-based, or whether you're using kind of facts, answering with sort of facts and yes-no type answers. But even if it is an essay subject, there's a mark scheme, there are things you need to do and points you need to hit in order to score the highest possible grade. But this isn't the case in real life. There's rarely, as I said, a wholly right or wrong answer. So we need to think about shifting and unlearning those habits. Similarly, in academia, you often are taught that you need to find out as much as possible to make the right decision. Spend as much time as you can, or as you choose, revising, using as many sources as you can, spending, the longer you spend on an essay, perhaps the better your grades will be. But in work life, it's the best decision you can make at the time. You don't have unlimited time and money. And so you need to use the information you can get hold of at the time in order to make the best possible decision. And it's a toss-up between the time you spend and what that time costs alongside the outcome and the quality of your decision. Additionally, in academia, it teaches you only have one shot to get it right. So there might be things like resits, but essentially you've got one chance in an exam or an essay to get the right answer, to get the best grade possible. But in real life, you can make a different decision later. You can change your mind. It doesn't mean that the initial decision was wrong. It just means that you've now got more information and you're able to tweak and edit the decisions you made to move forward in a slightly different direction. So I think it's really helpful to think about academia in this way, particularly when we're thinking about looking forward to the world of work and shifting our expectations, unlearning some of these habits, and start to perhaps utilise some of the work-life decision-making processes in our everyday lives to help us as we make that transition. In fact, when you have a number of options open to you, like you will have seen in the decision-making activity if you were here for the live session, there may not be a right or wrong answer, and that's a key thing for you to take away from this video. But when you make your decision and start down a particular path, it's up to you to make it into the right decision. So, for example, when you were choosing which university to go to or apply to, you might have had an offer from Leeds Beckett and another one from De Montfort University. You might have spent a long time looking at the pros and cons of each one. Perhaps you wrote a list, perhaps there were different columns, or perhaps used the kind of intuitive way, my friend went there and had a really good experience. I really enjoyed the open day here. Tossing up what you think is the best decision to make, the best university to go to. But in reality, whichever university you ended up at, Leeds Beckett in this case, your experience won't be defined by that initial decision that you made. It will be defined by you and the opportunities that you seek out and grasp. And it's the same when it comes to choosing jobs, applying to jobs, accepting offers, moving house, moving city, you know, all sorts of decisions we make in our life. You can't know the outcome of every decision, but you can actively choose to make the most of the decisions you make, and make them into the right decision. So that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it, found it helpful, and please do come back to watch the other videos in this confidence building program series. And I hope you have a good day. Thanks very much. Bye.